the employee of Razor Cult Books, Mr. Travis Croft. How are you, sir?
Kind of, you would assume I'm an employee. That's racist. A white
I
straight
just
man
lingered
can't own
here.
business. White straight men can't own businesses anymore, ladies and gentlemen. This is what the world's come to.
I'm an official loiterer, sir.
Anyway, I thought this is appropriate given that little conversation at the end of the show last week about
I think that's fair. I think that's fair.
Ghostbusters film, which is getting a lot of people who are very very excited about. So I think I'm in the minority last week.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are optimistic because I think there's still like Finn Wolfhard being in it and being certainly a popular young actor because of Stranger Things and the movie version of It. He certainly got himself a lot of positive cachet, and Paul Rudd is a very much a fan favorite, I guess. Plus the fact that it's the son of the director doing it, it's like, okay, there's a lot of goodwill going into this.
I think so. We did that last week, but I just sort of
should
have put this out for the show last week. But there you go.
You should have, but you let us down.
But we did get a new trailer this week for a friend of the show, Shay's favorite superhero film. The trailer to Venom came out. This second trailer.
Yes.
Venom came out. And I didn't think I could get any less excited about the sequel. But they managed it.
I don't quite get the whole thing of the cooking sequence. It's like, okay, sure. But I'm gonna go in with open mind because Woody Harrelson is great, and I think that he could be really good as Cletus Cassidy. I think that's his full name. So who knows? Who knows? We'll find out soon.
People liked the first one, and I didn't think it was very good. So it made enough money to get a sequel.
I don't think it was bad. I just think it didn't really do anything original. It was kind of very safe.
In contrast to, I think, to the film we're going to talk about in a minute, but you've nominated as the chain film of the week.
Mm-hmm.
I am just so done with movies that basically the premise is two CGI monsters bash each other. I think I talked about it when we did Kong versus Godzilla a few months ago. I'm like, it's two CGI things on the screen punching each other. Wow, it's exciting. That was cool 30 years ago, right? It hasn't been exciting for a very, very, very long time. So I don't understand why people get so interested in seeing that happen. I guess maybe in a sense, if you actually give a shit about the characters who are punching each other, like Thanos and Iron Man are CGI, but we cared about them. But it's just it was not even Woody Harrelson, right? It was Woody Harrelson punching Tom Hardy in the face at the end of the movie. That's something, but it's not. It's two CGI monsters, and that's not very exciting anymore.
Yeah,
I mean, maybe they have a really great story in the lead up, and that sells it. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe it could be interesting. Just talking on Trailer Talk, at work, I've been subjected to the comic book movie trailer reel. I've had to watch The Eternals repeatedly, Shang-Chi, the Batman, Venom, and it's like, okay, we've got an interesting mix right there because Venom, we both agree, is looking very middling. Did you hear that in the background?
Yes.
Apparently, the cat is being real pain in the ass.
It was either Archimedes or the cat. It was one or the other.
Yeah, he's being a shit. Then you've got the Eternals trailer, which seems to be more like a mood board piece because there's not really anything about the story in there except like, oh, it's going to be epic, going from the birth of mankind to present day and all that stuff. Like, okay, but what's it about? Pretty people.
It's just a teaser, though. I mean, in fairness to them, they'll give us a little bit more next time when they come out closer to release them. I think I've registered that my deep deep suspicion that these films are going to be some of the poorest work that Marvel's ever done. But much like you just said with Venom, I'm probably going in with a significantly more open mind on Shang-Chi and the Eternals because Marvel have earned that.
Yes.
Sony absolutely have earned zero credibility with their work on the Spider-Man films. I know you liked them a little bit, and or the previous Venom film. It could be anything. So, but I'm excited to see what they are. I'm very curious, but really, really don't look very good.
Yeah. And then there was, just to round it off, they're repeating the Batman trailer, and it's like, okay, that was great. They had about 10% of the film filmed when they released this stuff, and it already looks very good. It looks like it's actually trying to tell a personal story, very focused on the duality of Bruce Wayne and Batman. And I'm excited to see more. I want to see a proper trailer soon. That'd be lovely.
Question for you that popped into my head today while I was in the shower listening to Bat Dance by Prince.
It's nice to know that you think of me whilst in the shower.
No, I was thinking about you. I was thinking about Batman. Do you think Batman would hold the cachet it does today as arguably the premium comic book property in the world? I would say more than Superman. Would it have that cachet without Tim Burton's film from '89 being so cool and so different and so big?
Tim Burton's Batman is the reason that we have the MCU. It is the reason that superhero movies are the money that are the guaranteed bank that they are now. If it wasn't for that movie, God, I don't know. We could potentially have gone down an interesting tangent, because you think about comic book adaptations like The Crow, which was very well received when that came out. But again, I think that coming out was a result of the success of Tim Burton's Batman. There's always been, since Christopher Reeve put on the suit, there's always been that desire to get something as big and popular as that onto the screen. So I think that we would still be in probably a superhero movie bubble, but it would be a different kind of vibe to it. I don't think they would have evolved too much beyond like Sam Raimi's original Spider-Man trilogy, which
you come to the point, would we have even got to that point? Would we have got, some people say the X-Men was very important, but Bryan Singer's X-Men kind of 99 was the first one. 98, 99 kind of made a lot of money and kind of proved again. Considering after the Schumacher films kind of killed the Batman franchise. But it was just a thought that popped in my head, is that people don't seem to remember that superhero and comic book films were very much a rarity in the big screen. You had the Christopher Reeve films, but other than that, there weren't many around until the '89 Batman film. And that blew people's fucking minds because it was so out there and so different. And I recall the quote from Tim Burton. I think it's Tim Burton. He said when they knew that Michael Keaton had been cast as Batman, and the internet exploded and it didn't even exist yet. And
Mr. Mom.
If you go back and see his films, he's a great actor. So, but you go back and that film is so big and so special and weird, but fucking weird, really, for a superhero film, right? But he got that much creative freedom to make the film that way, and it really made him cool, right? Because I think at that point in time, you talk in '88, you talk Batman, you thought of Adam West.
Yeah, no one does the Bat Dance anymore. I think
weird random thought that popped in my head today.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting one. I think that it's one of the most important movies to come out for modern cinema, because especially just the narrative structure of it. And it's something that DC have not really been able to shake off in many ways. The hero in Batman is second billing to the Joker. Jack Nicholson got primary, and it's been the consistent thing of the villains usually outshine in DC properties, and they seem so reticent to go into the humanity of the heroes. It's an interesting one. Whereas for Marvel, it is very much the heroes show, and aside from a very select few, the villains are one and done, and that's it.
So 2 more things. One, I've read this week that they have cast a lead for the Blue Beetle movie for DC, which is really a deep cut for DC.
Yeah.
It's going to be, I don't even know, the guy who was in Cobra Kai, Zolo Mariduana. Mariduana. I don't know.
Mariduana's bad, okay?
Mariduana. But upcoming DC Blue Beetle movie might star Cobra Kai, Zolo Mariduana. There has been no shortage of DC projects rumored to be in the works, so it's just a rumor. And I'll just say this: that this will not be the last we talk about DC tonight.
No. I think it's kind of I think that's kind of a no-brainer for a movie because it's a lesser-known property, a popular young star, and the fact that if they stick to the certain runs of the comic, they can really go into the Latin American kind of thing, which, again, representation, that's a good, fresh opportunity. So, fingers crossed.
I have no problem. I just don't know anything about the character. So, and it's interesting to see him making a deep cut. And as of tomorrow, Australian time, we will have the Suicide Squad. And the early reviews, I think I have been avoiding them as much as possible, but I think the early reviews have been reasonably warm and positive towards.
It's been an interesting battle of the fates. You've had DC really pushing this, saying, "Oh, 100% fresh rating," and then Disney came out and saying, "Oh, it's 100% fresh rating on Jungle Cruise." It's like, okay, that's weird, but all right.
Somebody posted it on my Facebook feed the other day, going, "Oh my god, I'm so happy! I got a 96 or something on Rotten Tomatoes," and I'm like. Is that a good thing though? I mean, these are going to go there again. These are the critics who gave Ghostbusters a fresh rating. These are critics who gave Star Trek Discovery glowing reviews and fresh ratings. Even last week, to go back to the He-Man series, right? Like what we kind of thought was okay, has reasonably good Rotten Tomato, but a very poor audience score. And that could be because of review bombing, but I'm going to wait and see on this one. James Gunn, I trust, but I'm going to wait and see.
Yes, absolutely agree.
Should we get onto the show other than just faffing around about stuff that we don't normally talk about? Like, we don't talk about comic book movies. But I want to get onto your chain movie this week, which is Strange Days.
Strange Days.
1995 sci-fi noir thriller.
Yeah, and it's a weird one, isn't it? Looking back at it. So for those who don't, I'm going to share. Well, they're just going to have that running just at the bottom without any sound, so it's just there.
So you picked this one as quite a pedigree.
Yeah, I mean, it's directed by Catherine Bigelow. This was coming off of success of Point Break. It was co-written and produced by James Cameron, who was...
He did a film in the 90s you might have heard of.
The Traminator?
The Abyss, that's right.
Yeah.
That's the one you wouldn't have heard of it. Piranha 2, which is his first directing job. You would have definitely seen that one too. Little bit on a tiny obscure film in the 90s called fucking Titanic was the next thing he did.
Oh, that went nowhere.
Not to mention True Lies, the Terminator films, Avatar. He only directed 2 of the top 3 most highest grossing films of all time. So,
yeah, he doesn't know what he's doing at all. But yeah, so this is like I said before, it's a star-studded cast. You got Ralph Fiennes, Angela Bassett, Juliette Lewis, Tom Sizemore, Michael Wilcott, Vincent D'Onofrio, just to name the top kind of
and
5.
Our link, of course, was Joseph Summer, who was our link from last week, I think.
Yes, correct. And he played the police chief in this movie. Before we get too far in, we'll just do a very quick one, which is the summary. a former cop turned street hustler accidentally uncovers a conspiracy in Los Angeles in 1999 at the turn of the new year. I think that really boils it down. That's super boiled down, because I haven't watched this movie in a long time, and going back to it, I realized why I really enjoyed it when I first saw it, because it's got action, it's got sex, it has got this kind of dark, gritty 1999, 2000s era. It had a lot of social commentary about like Black lives and police in the US at the time, and it had that little element of sci-fi to it as well. Watching it this time, I realized, wow, this is a bit of a mess. It's not an easy movie to watch.
I would agree, but I think maybe a little harsh to call it a mess. It's not entirely successful. But I still think it's a thoroughly decent watch.
Oh, yeah. I just think that it's kind of a bit all over the place.
And it is. I kind of feel like halfway through the film, you kind of like, they're going somewhere interesting with this. They're going to, as you sort of say, we have our character uncover a conspiracy. You know, there's genuine threat involved. And you're like, we're going to find out what it is. It's going to be interesting. And in the end, it's a little bit mundane.
Yeah, it kind of ends up sort of like it's quite a long movie, at 2 hours 25 minutes, something like that, and you don't really get to the genuine crux of the movie, this almost like a murder mystery kind of thing, a detective chasing a bad guy, until about an hour in. It's just a lot of introducing the world and the characters.
Bit of context for the audience here. So Ray Fiennes is a street hustler, and he's wonderful in this, by the way. He's playing against type a little bit. He was in Schindler's List, I think, the year before this, maybe a year or two. It's the most probably the role that got him this part, and very, very different to what you. I mean, and he went on to do, the English Patient, very. He was very austere British dramas, and here he is playing a sleazy, oily street hustler, but he's very good. And his hustle is he has sells access to the squid technology, which is basically military tech or police technology that has been turned into the black market that records memories and onto mini discs. Remember mini discs? I had a mini disc player.
I couldn't afford a mini disc player.
They were expensive, and you couldn't get pre-recorded music on it here, so you had to record your own.
Right.
They were good though in a way, because they didn't skip like a CD. But I don't know if you could actually record video onto them. So I don't know about that. But anyway, they're very obviously mini discs, which were very high tech in the mid-90s. And he sells basically pornography, anything he will sell except for snuff, which people be killed or rape and that sort of thing. And
an example of that is the opening sequence. It is from first-person view, robbery, and as a note on this, the camera work is incredible.
They developed an entirely new version of type of camera to allow them to shoot that. Or shoot those.
It took a year. It took a year to do that.
Again, I mean, today, you see it all the time, right? It's so mundane. Your GoPro would do that super 4K, and that cost you $500. But these guys had to develop an entirely new system to shoot those first-person sequences. And one of his friends goes missing and turns up dead, and he starts receiving these weird recordings of his friends being being raped and murdered by the killer, and you think it's going somewhere interesting, but it's just the destination perhaps it doesn't pay off quite as well as it could have. And as you sort of say, it turns into a bit of a mystery whodunit thriller. Who can you trust? He's got threats on every side. And the only person that Lenny Nero, Ray Fiennes' character, can actually trust is his friend. I've heard her described as his bodyguard, but I don't think that's actually an accurate description of her character. His friend, Lornette Mason, played by Angela Bassett, who I think is actually the real breakout star of this film.
100%.
Also, would I say one of the more fascinating things about this film is she's actually the hero.
Yeah.
He is a damsel in distress. He's just like, and like I'm just a salesman, but she's the badass with like defense, who kung fu training, who beats the shit out of people and drives a bulletproof car out of town, and she's the badass. And so this I found is very interesting because I've been having ongoing conversations with people, as you know, we talked a little about last week about why I think films, especially who try and insert that. Force that diversity, especially when it comes to female representation, into their films in a really clumsy, ugly, obvious way. There's nothing obvious or clumsy about this, and this did it 30 years ago. And as I said, you can walk away. It's very obvious to me watching this film. Angela Bassett is the badass hero in this film, but without being the protagonist, which is an interesting challenge. It's an interesting mix. But you can, if you're a talented writer, include a female badass character again without being the protagonist very easily. I mean, this is James Cameron again did it very well with Linda Hamilton in the Terminator films.
Yeah, and the way that he injected that level of motherly nature into Ellen Ripley in Aliens. He's proven track record for actually having very good, strong, realistic, in many ways, or at least rounded female characters in his movies, especially when they're in the lead, because they like Linda Hamilton. She starts off as this kind of mousy girl who just works a fucking fast food place, but the evolution of her character as she goes on, it's awesome, and it's all organic, and it feels really true and real. This, you've got Mace being this whole character and just breathing these elements of depth into her performance. It's awesome to see. This is what female roles should be like. Not we're doing this because it ticks that box.
And we have to do it. So I don't know how. Just say she's awesome. She's good at everything. I don't know. Like, I mean, I again, I don't want to get too down this rabbit hole, but it occurred to me while I was watching it, going, they're very cleverly and subtly making her the hero here. In that she regularly rescues Lenny from violent situations with her skills. But that's established early on. She is a limo driver, runs her own company, as best we can tell. And, when he's kind of hustling one of her clients, Lenny's like, oh, she's got self-defense and weapons training, and the car's bulletproof, of course. And you're like, see, one line of dialogue. We know she's a badass, and then we proven to be a badass through her actions later on. And interestingly, it doesn't make Lenny look like a weakling at the same time. Like, Lenny has his own set of strengths. Like, he's an incredible hustler and talker. But he's not the guy you want to go throwing fists with a football player. Like in one of the characters in the film, he's actually a former football player, and he's gets his ass kicked by him a couple of times, and you're like, that's not who he is, right? That's not who his character is. He's a talker. So it makes perfect sense that he's going to get dominated in a fight. Yeah. So it's very cleverly and skillfully done in that he's established a character who is a badass. We know why. We know why this guy's not much of a fighter, and it all works. So if you're out there and you're a writer and you're thinking to yourself, how do I want to write a character who's a female character or whatever, an inclusive role, just study at the feet of James Cameron, because he's already done it. He's shown you the way.
Yeah. The other thing that I will point out about the relationship between Mace and Lenny is that they inform the other character. They develop the other character as well. As you said, he is the damsel in distress in many of the physical altercation situations, but it never weakens him in any way, and vice versa. and because they are very strong, well-written characters, very well-rounded characters, when you're seeing one do their speciality, it informs on the other one, and it helps breathe more life into that. So often, you end up just having these bizarre scenarios where one character is all it is about, and it's just like everything is to serve that other character. It never goes the other way, and it's especially evident in a lot of superhero movies where it's all about serving the hero rather than just lift all, high tide raises all ships kind of thing.
What do you make though? Criticism here though. What did you make of her basically Anne telling her telling Lenny she was in love with him? I felt that was a little tacked on personally.
Yeah, I don't think they needed it. Not necessarily against it, but it was an extra layer that I think they could have quite comfortably done without. But again, Angela Bassett and Ralph Fiennes are fantastic actors, and they played it very well. And it doesn't take up a lot of the screen time. It doesn't slow the pace down to like struggling points or anything like that. It's good in that regard. So I'm okay with that.
I would have liked to have seen it kept at the level of a platonic friendship, because you don't see a lot of those in cinema, and it's almost not interesting enough to get included. It's not on the same level. You need that love angle to really give that relationship legs, and I don't think this relationship needed it quite so much. Another weak point of the film for me, well, it's a very, 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 very subtle weak point. I'm being a bit picky. Tom Sizemore. Okay, spoilers here. This is a 30-year-old, 26-year-old film. If you haven't seen it yet and you don't want to know what happens, the usual. Fast forward
I'm not
ahead.
putting spoilers up for this.
As soon as you see Tom Sizemore, he's the bad guy.
Especially with that hair.
I mean, the only slight swerve here was the fact that Michael Wincott is in it, who, for those who don't know, is a deep, gravelly voiced guy from The Crow. Who is the bad guy?
And from Robin Hood.
Oh yes, what is Spoon? One of the axe. Because but I don't think he was the guy from The Crow. I think he might have been the guy who shot Brandon Lee, maybe. Don't quote me on that. But he's always a bad guy as well, really. He's kind of a douche, but he's not the villain. In this. But well, it's Tom Sizemore. Tom Sizemore's always the bad guy, pretty much, except for I think in Heat he wasn't the bad guy. But you're like, with that haircut, it's totally Tom Sizemore.
It's like, you just look at it and go, yep, it's Tom Sizemore, and he's got that haircut.
That said, though, this film is as close to my League of Villains film I talked about earlier in the year with Mads Mikkelsen in it, because it's got Tom Sizemore, always a bad guy. Michael Wincott, always a bad guy. Vincent fucking D'Onofrio, pretty commonly the bad guy. And William Fichtner, also always the bad guy. You stick Mads Mikkelsen and Christoph Waltz in there, and we'd almost have it entirely covered. But it's interesting. You mentioned it had a stunning cast. It was probably a fairly, in hindsight, a very good cast. But in 1995, maybe not so much. Angela Bassett and Ray Fiennes have just come off Oscar nominations for Schindler's List and What's Love Got to Do with It. And Juliette Lewis was a familiar-ish face at the time, but there's no AAA movie star in this movie. It was you go through you can go through the trivia. I'm pretty sure they offered the lead role to anyone in Hollywood. Mel Gibson, Stallone, Schwarzenegger, all those guys. Bruce Willis, but none of them wanted it. And they probably got Arnold Schwarzenegger, Denzel Washington, Michael Keaton, Tom Cruise, Jeff Bridges, Mel Gibson, Bruce Willis, Andy Garcia, Nicolas Cage, Patrick Swayze, John Travolta, Sean Penn, Bill Paxton, Dennis Quaid, and Kurt Russell.
A lot of Hollywood.
But they landed on the guy who needed the American role, I guess. But that might have been part of the reason why this film didn't do very well when it came out.
No, it didn't.
The
It is
complete plot.
definitely your definition of cult classic.
And it's extraordinarily difficult to find. Like,
Yes.
we had to jump through hoops to get this. Like, we basically had to steal a copy, and I'm not afraid to say it because you won't fucking sell it to me.
Yep.
And that's an interesting
If
thing
you-
we are finding doing the chain movie thing, where we're being a little bit random and we're trying to pick unobvious films that are a little bit outside the main. I mean, this is not too far outside the main. It's a bit of a cult hit, but it literally has never been released on Blu-ray. There's, I think, there is an out of print DVD you can get. And I'm
not on any streaming service.
Not on YouTube. It was a very dark version on YouTube. I think that's it. But it's becoming incredibly obvious. Like, actually, when I go for and I think about picking what movie I'm going to do next, what I do while I'm doing it is I actually check. I'm like, is it on a streaming service? Can I find a copy somewhere? Because it is interesting. I reckon it would have been easier to do this job 25 years ago in some ways than it is now, because video stores existed. And
I remember in the video stores, I remember when this came to VHS and DVD, and there was the shelf of them, and I remember that the three heads with Strange Days, the black on the background, it was great, very minimalist front cover. I remember seeing that.
I definitely saw it on VHS, I think, back in the 90s when it came out, because like, oh my, that cast is amazing. And the soundtrack was pretty cool too. So anyway, it's just an interesting observation that like, it's becoming actually becoming more difficult now in the age of streaming to see movies than older, or maybe slightly older movies than it was 25 years ago when physical media was more of a thing. And it's quite fascinating, but I don't understand. Maybe, one or two films occasionally you come across where there's a rights thing. Who owns the rights to this? Someone's dead, this company going bankrupt, but it's so common that you literally have to actually go to not quite the dark web, but you have to resort to downloading to actually be able to see, the films that we want to watch.
I think it kind of falls into an odd scenario because it's Lightstorm Entertainment that produced this, which is Jim Cameron's production company. And I think pretty much all of his projects have been at Fox that he has directed at the very least. And so they are generally all available or will all eventually be available on Disney. But I don't know what the situation is with Strange Days because obviously it's not directed by Jim Cameron. It's directed by Catherine Bigelow. And you can tell that it's a Catherine Bigelow directed movie. When you look at some of the other stuff that she did with Point Break, you think of the Hurt Locker, you think of Zero Dark 30, any of those movies, she has got a very gritty, boots on the ground kind of attitude. It's very visceral filmmaking.
It's very pessimistic, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Throughout every moment of it, it's bleak. Like, I don't think there's a single... I don't remember a sequence happening during the day. Apparently, it was like an 85-day shoot and 75 days were night shoots or something like that. It's like, that's a dark movie and it's a bleak movie. It's always very, very packed streets, fires burning, people smashing shit up. It's very bleak. It really captures the sort of like the dark side of the turning of the new year with Y2K and people kind of coming in. Like, it opens with sort of like the voiceovers is like, oh, the end of days, blah 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 blah, and it's like people were actually talking like that. I remember
this film. I think was definitely, he wrote this original story in '86. James Cameron, apparently. So he didn't write the screenplay, but the idea and the story is, I think, a Cameron original. But they picked it up again, I think, after being inspired by the LA riots and the Rodney King thing in the early 90s. And you can see that at the end of the film. There's a scene where Angela Bassett is beaten by multiple police with their batons before they're turned on by the crowd. And that, I think, is the Rodney King moment writ large for the film. And that ending scene kind of being, the LA riot kind of inspired bit, but also the streets with cars burning. There's also a scene of maybe very subtle, but like being a history nerd, I got it. But there's a character, an Asian character, standing outside a grocery store with like a rifle as chaos goes on around him. And again, I think that's a direct reference to the LA riots, where Asian-owned businesses in black neighborhoods were targeted and to be burnt and looted by the rioters. And there are famous pictures of Asian store owners up on the roof with rifles shooting at the rioters to defend their businesses. So I'm pretty sure that was not there by accident. So that little nod's like, this is a film. This is 95. The LA riots were 92 from memory. So this is a film that's very heavily influenced by that apocalyptic vibe that was going on in that city in particular in the early 90s. And again, you think about a film like Demolition Man. Okay, it's a strange leap, but go with me. That whole idea of like that society was a crumbling edifice that was going to be where John Spartan wakes up in the future. He's like, oh, I thought the future would be a cesspool, a rotting cesspool or something. And he didn't expect the world that he woke up to. It's kind of played as a gag, but this is not an unusually pessimistic attitude at that point in time.
There were a lot of movies towards the end of the 20th century that really did take a pessimistic view of it. I mean, even you look at The Matrix and the way that they talk about society and the turn of the century, the birth of AI, and then it crumbled. It's like, okay, that's very pessimistic, and you just see it through all of it. We talked about it before, The Crow. That's a very, very pessimistic portrayal of a part of a city. It's lawless. It's almost like the next logical step before you get to Megacity 1 and Judge Dredd. It's really bleak.
And I liked it. It was also a very pessimistic take on the police. The police are not represented well in this film.
Oh, they are not.
And again, you kind of think to yourself and go, would they do that today? I mean, maybe. I think it was, initial thought was no, but I'm like, well, Hollywood are very big on the Black Lives Matter thing. But I mean, would they be so brazen as to represent the police so negatively today as being crooks and murderers, as they essentially are in this film?
I think that they do, but it's definitely more of an individual thing, whereas this movie shows certain levels of corruption and antagonistic nature throughout, from the street walking police officers right up to City Hall. Whereas you think of movies like Street Kings or the Denzel Washington one.
Training Day.
Training Day. They are about corrupt, horrible cops and things like that, but it's about one. It's very specifically about one. It doesn't damn the whole institution. And I don't know whether we would get that now, but at the same time, it could very well be ripe for it.
You're right. They probably wouldn't tar all police for the same brush. You'd be like, oh, it's just bad apples. Where I think this film is perhaps I'm a little bit on the page of you being not quite all the way there, is essentially the film revolves around the fact that two police officers randomly decided to murder a famous rapper. One of them being Vincent D'Onofrio and William Fichtner. Those are two police you do not want to run into. Speaking of, apparently Vincent D'Onofrio could be back into the MCU. They want him in the Spider-Man film as his character from Daredevil. Which is actually not a terrible thing because he was good in that.
He was very good.
But anyway, he's good in this again. They just randomly, we find out, we don't even know at the start what has happened. We know that they're trying to shoot somebody. We find out later that they pulled over Jericho 1, who's like a Tupac Shakur kind of character. And for being black, essentially, is the insinuation in the film. And when he starts mouthing off to the police, they decide to shoot him and his entourage. And to cover the whole thing up, one of his entourage escapes, who happens to have the squid tech on her head, which means she has a recording of the fact that they did the murder. So the entire rest of the plot is driven by them trying to track down and retrieve that recording of them murdering Jericho 1. It's a slightly weak motivation for me to drive the story because we don't really know very much about Jericho. He's dead at the start of the film.
Yeah.
He sort of gets scenes where, oh, he's a really big deal. He's a really big deal. But we don't really actually know him or care about him as a character. So
Yeah.
I kind of feel like that's a fairly weak motivation to drive the story forward.
Yeah. And I feel like that's, for me, that's the biggest sin of the movie, because it ends up not necessarily being a mess in sort of like, oh, it's terrible. It's messy narration of the story and progression of the story, because like I said before, it's like an hour or so before Lenny sees this footage for the first time and realizes that he's in a dangerous situation. And it's just been a very bizarre kind of almost documentary following this sleazy guy through the underbelly of the city and his interactions with other people around him who are all equally broken in some way or another. And then suddenly it's like, okay, this happened. And then it becomes a chase movie. And it's like, okay, it's definitely picking up pace now. It just kind of feels disjointed, I guess, is a better way for me to describe it.
It's a fair complaint. I think we're talking about a similar thing. Is they kind of waited too long to tell us what's happening.
Yeah. Yes.
And we are almost kept in the dark as long as we are kept in the dark as long as the character is. And I don't know. I think we need to have that little bit more of knowledge about what's really going on. I think another weakness of mine, being a little picky here, is I wonder about the appeal of Juliette Lewis. She was kind of an it girl in the 90s, but like, I don't know. The relationship between Lenny, Faith, she plays Faith, who is the current girlfriend of Michael Wincott's Philo, and secretly the squeeze of Max Peltier, Sizemore's character. But she's the ex-girlfriend of Lenny. And a lot of his motivations about lusting after her, protecting her, making sure she's safe. And I guess, like, wow, Juliette Lewis, really? I don't know. I just find her really, I don't know, unconvincing.
She's like known for Natural Born Killers, Cape Fear, From Dusk Till Dawn. It's sort of like, okay, there's definitely a type that she plays, and she plays that quite overtly psychotic woman very frequently. And I don't know, it's just sort of like, okay. I think I get why she's cast, because she's a competent actor entirely. She's very pretty, and in a not being too detrimental intentionally, but like Jennifer Lawrence of then, like Jennifer Lawrence went through a phase of being put into fucking everything, and it's like, okay, like the Silver Linings Playbook, she obviously was playing much older character than what she actually is, and it's like, okay, you're really struggling to actually portray that character. You're in there because you're Jennifer Lawrence. May not have been the best choice for you, but hey, she did well with it anyway. What do I know?
I guess the fact that she did her own singing in this, because she is a musician of sorts. And she has a band. Well, not what she's been, but in the same way I would say Russell Crowe is a musician of sorts. He has a band. Toni Collette has a band. Jeremy Renner releases records. Bruce Willis used to release records.
Steven Seagal.
In that kind of bracket of performers, that the music she performs is PJ Harvey songs, which are not a terrible choice.
No.
The look of the film is probably one of the main attractions for me. You've mentioned the camera work. The first-person sequences are amazingly beautiful. They hold up spectacularly well, even 25 years later. And just the set design, the vibe. I don't know. The pre-millennial tension is really nicely done in this, and it was a moment in time, right? Because it was gone, right? Because the millennium bug didn't really become a thing. And the world didn't fall apart. It took another 20 years for that to happen. So, it was an interesting moment to be alive and old enough to recognize what was going on. And I think this film captures that lightning in a bottle moment pretty nicely, even though it was done in 95.
Yeah. I absolutely agree. I think it did a good job of kind of future-proofing itself just by the way that, we see snippets of Lenny's relationship with Faith when he's kind of reminiscing and just sitting there thinking about going roller skating, and that's possibly the only sequence that I can remember that was in Sun, and it was of this happier, more hopeful, optimistic time. And then every time it cuts back to him, it's just this sad, pathetic man sitting on the floor with on his head,
I mean, I love the idea of a tech as well, because if someone somewhere at Facebook or something is working on that right now,
Yeah. Well, those headphones, they're reading your thoughts, Travis.
You think I need headphones for that these days? Like you, I am vaccinated now. I'm fully wireless.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
George took his first step into a larger world today by joining the Astro Zucchini clan.
Mm-hmm.
We're very lucky, but we're still talking to each other because I'm part of the Pfizer clan.
Well, the reason why I can't do that one, the Pfizer clan, is because I'm too young, and it would take way too long to get that one.
Yeah, it's kind of a mess. Yeah, it's kind of a mess. But I love the idea of a memory recording tech. And you're right. If somebody, if somebody came up with it, it would be, you think Facebook's bad for society? Wow.
Well, it made me think of the episode of Black Mirror, The Grain.
Yeah, very similar in that way. That was A Complete History of Us, I think it was called.
That's right. Yeah.
Robert Downey Jr., I think, actually optioned that. Did nothing with it.
But I can see that sort of tech being very, very close to being a thing. I really can.
I have no idea if it's remotely possible, but someone's going to try and make it possible. It's also one of the key plot points in Ready Player 2, the awful sequel to Ready Player 1, which may or may not be turned into a film.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, if you liked the first book, don't read it. It's fucking terrible. That's why I'm here. I did it for you.
Yes.
This. I'm glad to have gone back and watched this again. It was an interesting trip.
Yeah, me too. I think it was definitely worthwhile revisiting. And while I guess it's lost a little bit of the shine from when I first saw it, back when it was released, probably, I still think it's quite an important movie to have. Like we talked about the legacy of Bullitt and Dirty Harry, and I think that this is also indicative and informative of the 1995, 96, 97 era of filmmaking.
Definitely. I am going to take us somewhere quite different. I'm going to take us to something I have seen, but I have not seen this film for probably 30, 35 years. And I think it's a film that is currently being reassessed. It might be a polite way of putting it. Whether it deserves it or not. And I think maybe it's a film for us to dip our toe into the water, to take our part in that reassessment and go, did it deserve what it got at the time? We are going to be following the one, the only Richard Edson, who played Tick, I think, in this film. And we are going way back to 1986, where he played the character of Richie in Howard the Duck. The Marvel character, one of the very earliest Marvel characters that got a film.
Why do you hate me?
It's currently being reassessed. It's literally playing at the Melbourne International Film Festival this year. It's playing at the Astor on Saturday night. Unfortunately, I can't go, but it is on Prime. A sarcastic humanoid duck is pulled from his homeworld to Earth, where he must stop an alien invasion with the help of a nerdy scientist and a struggling female rock singer. Starring Jeffrey Jones, but sorry, nothing about that one. Leah Thompson, Tim Robbins, amongst others. Produced, I think, by George Lucas.
I think so. Yeah,
I think it certainly had a lot to do with it. If he didn't write it or direct it, but it was definitely under the imprimatur of Lucasfilm, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. I think if I remember rightly, there was something that popped up on my feed the other day that Robin Williams was going to be the voice of Howard the Duck, and then quit after like 3 days because it was awful, or he didn't like the sync work that was happening between his voice work and the duck,
the puppet. So obviously, you familiar with him, you don't like it, but all I'm saying is this is a film that is currently being reassessed. Howard the Duck is canon MCU. He was in Endgame, and he was in one of the Guardians films, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he was in the end of Guardians 2. Thank you, James.
And he was in the battle at the end of Endgame.
Yeah, but there were hundreds of people that were in that battle.
There's only one duck, though. So I call this being a giant pile of shit when I saw it back in the 80s. But, you know, maybe with an adult perspective, I will get a different idea of it.
Yeah. I'm going to punish you after this.
This is a genuine thing. Like, it could be good.
Yes, and I could also suddenly develop muscle mass and not take off in a light wind like a kite.
It's also written by the guy who wrote Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, so I'm just making it easy for you, really. Or you can go Back to the Future. It's so many places to go. Jeffrey Jones, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Tim Robbins.
You opened us up to bad superhero movies, so Tim Robbins was in Green Lantern. I'll make you watch that motherfucking movie.
I could have gone to Green Lantern. Angela Bassett was in Green Lantern, so.
Yes, she was. Yes, she was.
So I did not. I thought we'd go to something a little bit more interesting, something we haven't seen in a very long time.
Fine.
I think it's going to be that. I don't think it's going to be as bad as you reckon it is. If nothing else, it will be an interesting time capsule for we were talking earlier about what do superhero films look like after Superman, before Batman.
Where would we be without Howard the Duck?
No. More to the fact of, like, this goes back to my question from before. What would superhero films look like if we didn't have a super weird, super edgy, out there, Tim Burton, cool Batman? You know,
true.
Would we see stuck with campy, ridiculous superhero films like this? You know, would Batman be? Would they have gone ahead with, you know, campy, ridiculous Batman, Adam West style? Don't know.
They would have actually properly released the Fantastic Four movie.
That probably wouldn't have happened. that was not as superhero films made on a shoestring go.
That was one.
It was better than the Captain America film.
That's true. That's true.
Not saying very much.
Not
saying much. But anyway, so that's next week. George will be very unhappy to watch Howard Duck. As I said, it's available to stream on Amazon Prime in Australia if you are keen to watch along. Or, as I said, it's playing at Myth in Melbourne. It's playing at the Astor on Saturday night.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. We've given you something to look forward to on Saturday night.
I don't know if there are tickets available. You know, you never know your luck.
It's true. Caro Kitty just popped in the chat and said there's always Darkman, which I recently went back and rewatched. And it was definitely the test bed for Sam Raimi doing superhero movies. And it was a movie.
That was the film, if I'm not mistaken, that Alec Baldwin passed on doing. Alec Baldwin was in that, wasn't he? He was a bad guy.
Not in Darkman.
That was something else. Liam Neeson was the Darkman. What was he? The Shadow?
That was Alec Baldwin, yeah.
And that was the one that was he passed on doing another Tom Clancy film, Clear and Present Danger. No, the Patriot Games. He passed on Patriot Games to do.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, so it's not Darkman, but that has a much better rating than Howard the Duck. So
Yes.
you tune in next week, and you can hear George give me all the hate in the
Correct.
world. I'm telling you now, it's currently being reassessed. It's had people giving it another chance. I don't know if we should too.
Yes, I'm sure that it is being reassessed, and I'm sure that assessment is going to remain.
Wow, Francis McDormand was in Darkman. That would have been an interesting choice.
Yeah.
He'd gone to Fargo after that. But anyway, shall we move on to the most important thing of the week, being our
sponsors.
Our sponsors of the week. So I'm just going to queued up. We've got some fantastic sponsors this week who have kindly donated but nothing really, but you get to enjoy it.
Look what they've got at Robbie's World. At Robbie's World, there's heaps to do. Bring your friends and mum too. Visit the castle or fly in the sky. Robbie's World has lots of rides, helicopters, fire engines, trams and slides. Robbie's World. Springs are roads, not a worry. It's great at Robbie's World.
Grand Sile, where in Brunswick and Footscray, Franco Cozzo, have the pleasure to present to you Il Modernissimo, bedroom suites, dining room, and wonderful lounge. Why don't you come for yourself and have a look at this magnifico Il Modernissimo, only can found from Franco Cozzo. Buy from Franco Cozzo. Megalo, sepulli basto Franco Cozzo. Trapezeria, crevatocameras, salonia, carecles, apoto Franco Cozzo. E latte, nagorazite, epipla, sto Franco Cozzo. In Brunswick and Footscray. Nagorazite sto Franco Cozzo. Franco Cozzo per la prima volta in Australia dichiara guerra ai prezzi, grande svendita. Dove? A Brunswick e Footscray. Se i migliori mobili volete comprare, oggi, domani e sempre, da Franco Cozzo dovete andare. Dove? A Brunswick and Footscray. Comprate da Franco Cozzo.
In the way of our tribe, a warrior must fight the great grizzly with bare hands, like these mighty warriors before you.
Yeah, I'd rather munch on Mancheros.
G'day. Come and I'll show you some of my favourite spots around Australia.
Coonamble, Coonalpin, Coonua Bridge, Stop the Fridge, Coonawara, Coongoomerang, Coonabarabran, loves that coon taste.
Now let's talk to some real cheese experts.
You mean coon cheese experts, Peter?
See what I mean?
Been eating canned cheese for 60 years or more.
Me too.
60 years? Come on. All around Australia, people love that great coon taste. Say cheese.
There you have it. I told you a couple were in pretty bad taste. I should note that Coon Cheese has currently renamed itself Cheer Cheese just recently. Quite controversial.
Is it in like cheer?
It's in CHEER, Cheer. It's not called Coon anymore. It's called Cheer because, there are some connotations to the previous name, which were perhaps undesirable in certain quarters.
I think it's just that the guys at South Park just said, "Excuse me, you can't use that because Eric Cartman is the coon."
And unfortunately, I have to advise everyone that Wobbie's World isn't there anymore. It's a thing when people would travel from around the world to go to Nunawading for the fabulous tram and helicopter rides. I would beg my parents to go to Wobbie's World when I saw that commercial. Like, it's too far away. It's too expensive. And they probably just saved me, an hour and a half in traffic and a pretty shitty afternoon. So, And I think also just to note there that the second commercial being the Franco Gazzo is a reason why Footscray is properly pronounced Footscray, not Footscray. Brunswick and Footscray.
Footscray.
Footscray. It's called Footscray for a reason, and he's the reason. And
Okay.
Karen Kitty, you're probably sitting there you're in Washington, if I recall correctly, going, WTF, what the hell is he talking about? a bit of culture. A bit of culture for you on a Wednesday morning.
Okay, so Travis, I need to just clarify something. None of what we saw was culture. Or at least good. That's Australia, mate.
I tell you what, it's coming from a country that considers bread and butter pudding cuisine,
No, it's considered food, which is a broad umbrella.
Deep fried Mars bars are cuisine in
That's Scottish.
It's all over one place, right? How many countries are in this country?
I apologize for all our Scottish listeners out there. We're well aware that you do not want to be part of
their own bloody fault. They had the chance to get out and they all voted no, so they can fuck right off. New Hampshire, USA.
Clearly, people in the UK don't actually know what voting is.
Well, apparently not. Good morning to you, Cara Kitty from New Hampshire. I haven't been.
New Hampshire.
Visiting. It's in the northeast. I knew it was up that way, sort of. It was the east. It's the right side of the country, right? So, I've been to New York, but it's as far. I've been to Buffalo, which is also in New York, but as far north as I've been in the United States, and it was fucking cold. I remember I had a hire car and I was taking it back to the airport and I was filling it with gasoline, and this guy was
on that terrible American accent.
The guy's like, "What are you doing here? It's cold." And I'm like, "Oh, mate, I'm just filling the car up before." I do get significantly more Australian when I visit the United States because I tell you what, that accent opens doors in that country. And no, mate, I'm just filling it up, taking it back to the airport, eh? It's like, where are you from? I'm like, Australia. He goes, you're a long way from home. Pointing out the bleeding obvious is apparently a national pastime. There's a tip for anybody who are ever allowed to travel again and you get to visit the United States. I highly recommend being as Aussie as possible. I think hopefully most of you will attest that I don't often put the Queensland "I" at the end of sentences, but do it. Trust me. It's so much fun. Anyway, we've had our sponsors. We've had our train movie. We know George is hating next week's train movie. What else have you got this week?
I carried on with the Fear Street trilogy on Netflix. And I finished watching part 2 and part 3. And I'm going to just quickly pop that up here. Just have that trailer just in the background like that. And yeah. So as I was saying previously, part 1 set in the 90s, and it definitely has that kind of feel of like Scream and those quintessential slasher horror movie kind of vibes to it with a supernatural element. And Netflix released Fear Street Part 1, 1996. Then 1 week later, they released Fear Street Part 2, which was 1976. And then another week later, they released the third part, which was Fear Street 1666. And I really enjoyed it. Whilst the story itself is somewhat obvious, it did really good things. And it's particular the way that it used narrative across the 3 movies was fantastic. Because whilst each movie was very much its own movie, it also actually served almost like a miniseries, because you got these great little sequences. The story is essentially told in 1996, and then the 1976 and 1666 are kind of flashbacks to round out more of the legend around Sarah Fear, who is the known witch that is causing all the trouble in this very, very poor side of town. And in Fear Street Part 3, it goes very much into kind of the almost like a slasher movie in The Crucible, or The Village, or something like that, where it is very obviously period piece. It's kind of American settlers still just finding their feet and things like that. But it does really, really well. And I really hope that more filmmakers actually go this route, because it was actually a really good opportunity. And I've talked about this in the past with Zack Snyder, where one movie is too short for him to be able to actually do what he wants to do. And so this is a great way of him doing one giant movie but spread more palatably across the rest of it. And I'm really hoping that they invite him to do something like that, invite Christopher Nolan to do something like this. It's just a new way of delivering larger storytelling. And what was really good about it as well is the characters are all actually well-rounded. Like, there is the main character is lesbian in 1996, and it's done very well. It's not thrown in there because they want to tick boxes. It's just so happens to be part of her character, and it informs on some of the antagonistic relationships on what happens, and it informs on how society is between the two sides, the rich side and the poor side of this township. And it does it really well. So yeah, I just really, really enjoyed it. It's
good things about these films.
Yeah,
everyone I know who's seen them says they really seem to like them.
Yeah, they're not like masterpieces or anything like that, but they're really solid. They're well written. They're entertaining. They are a bit spooky in some cases. The violence is pretty violent. Like, this axe goes to the face, and you see the axe go into the face and cave it in. So if you are squeamish, then you're going to find it hard. But overall, I think you're going to enjoy it, because it's just a really good movie or good series of movies that you can't really jump into like part 2 or part 3 on its own, because it is part of a larger story arc. But the fact that all of them are on Netflix, it does make it very palatable, and they do have kind of like previously on in front of the 2 sequels. But if you're jumping in at part 3, that's just a weird place to start. So just don't do it. Just watch from Fear Street 1. And if you don't like the way that it tells its story in part 1, just bounce, because it's very clear on what it wants to do and how it wants to do it. And it does that throughout all 3, transporting you through these different points in time and expanding the story and the legacy and the legend behind it.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
You're saying it has a Scream kind of vibe. She directed 2 episodes of Scream, basically the creator and director and writer. Directed 2 episodes of a Scream TV series back in the mid 2010s. So she obviously had some heritage there to work with, in the sense she's had some. Fairness, I don't remember the Scream TV series.
I think I watched like 1 episode of it when it came out, but I don't really remember that.
They're doing another Scream film, I think, if I read correctly. Is a Scream 4.
Yeah, and I think it's coming out soon.
I think they got the whole. Is it 4? They're just calling it Scream because.
Yeah.
Fuck you if you remember the first one from '96, which I do.
Everyone wants to have a branding issue.
And they got the whole thing back. You don't see much of Nev Campbell anymore. Anyway, so it's interesting that it seems to have had a bit of a hit, because I think a lot of people have been talking to me about it, how good it is.
Well, it's it's more of your kind of classic old school horror movie rather than torture porn kind of thing, which
or found footage, which we have so much of today, right?
yeah,
Or part of the,
it's found footage, that sort of stuff, and it feels very boring now. So it's nice to actually have just a horror story that also tells a story.
Because I know I was reading recently what was it? The franchise that got Funky Johnson and one of the Wilson guy in it. The Conjuring. The Conjuring franchise has made like well over $1 billion or something. And I'm like, those films are awful. They're objectively terrible films, horror films and films. They're terrible. They're all bad. Don't watch them. But people do, and so you got to be part of the franchise now, even in the horror world.
Vera Farmiga, not Farmiga.
That doesn't change the fact that they suck. And so, or like the Sinister films, we're still making those, or the Saw films, you're still making those. The Purge films, they're still making those.
They make money. That's the thing. Horror movies
they make money.
Really uniformly make money, and they're usually cheap to make.
Yeah,
which is why places like Blumhouse are very, very popular, because they know how to make movies cheap, and they go, "Yep, okay. If we make $250 million off this movie, we have got back our money 15 times. We're good. Let's keep going." Which is,
they actually do make some decent stuff though. Like they've made some.
They made Invisible Man with Elizabeth Moss,
but they've made some decent shit. So, and I think the Fear Street films. I grew up with the Friday the 13th slasher films, you know, and Halloween to a lesser extent, and the Nightmare on Elm Street films to a lesser extent. And it's kind of strange that they've decided that we don't make films like that anymore. You know, like they were so popular. Yeah, they're just sort of going, we don't do that anymore. And like, well, you know, there's obviously still a market for it.
Well, I mean, they've tried to reboot like the Freddy Krueger character, and they got Jackie L. Haley to take up the clawed hand to moderate success. They did a remake of Chucky. They got Mark Hamill to do the voice of Chucky, and it was okay to not good. I feel like the classic horror movies could very easily come back if they were treated with reverence, like the latest, the more recent Halloween movie where they got Jamie Lee Curtis to come back, and she's fucked up, and she's almost as fucked up as Michael Myers, and it's like it was actually pretty good. It's like, oh, okay, I'll see more of that. And then they kind of fudged it with the next one, I think, from what it sounds like. But oh well.
Anyway, it's a strong recommendation. Fear Street films have a strong review. I headed out the other night to the theatre, the actual cinema. Into the cinema. So for those who are not local, we have been in lockdown here until mid last week, I think. And it's just a matter of time until they fucking lock us down again, because we have a thoroughly incompetent government who has no idea what they're doing. But we're still not as bad as Sydney are. So fuck those guys. It's what you get when you vote for someone like you voted for. They're almost as bad as the Poms. But I went to the cinema, not to get political. I went to the cinema the other day. I had to find myself a new local cinema, having moved house. I went to the one, the Como in South Yarra, which I don't think I'll be rushing back to. And I saw 9 Days, which is a film I'd seen a trailer for a little while ago, and I was quite curious about. 9 Days stars Winston Duke, Zazie Beetz, and Benedict Wong. So if you might know, Winston Duke, of course, played Buku, or whatever his name was, in Black Panther. Benedict Wong, of course, was in Doctor Strange. If we're talking Marvel, was it Wong or Chang or something he plays?
Who's Wong?
Yeah. And he's also, of course, in a fantastic role in T Crowd, if you want to go back that far.
Good. Yeah.
And Zazie Beetz was, of course, in, if I'm not mistaken, it was Daredevil too. She was in, Deadpool. Sorry, Deadpool. There's that one I always screw up, and of course, she was in Joker. Some serious superhero movie side, people. Another recognizable faces in here be Tony Hale, who was probably best known. I knew straight away from Arrested Development, and where he played Buster Booth. And also did the voice of Forky in Toy Story 4. And Bill Skarsgård's in here as well. Of course, played Pennywise, and just can't get away from looking weird. So, interesting little cast. A reclusive man conducts a series of interviews with human souls for a chance to be born. Fascinating premise. So I would describe this as an indie art science fiction film. And I think while I was watching it, I found myself going, this would make a fascinating comparison or companion piece to Soul, but the Pixar film that came out last year about somewhat similar topic. So Winston Duke plays Will, who is, I guess, what one would call an interviewer. He lives in a house kind of in the middle of this huge desert. And he has all these TVs in his living room, which where basically is a first-person view of a bunch of different people who are souls that he selected to go into those bodies. And so he can follow their daily lives, and he takes notes about what they're up to every day, and has like filing cabinets, and it's all really old school technology. It's like really old CRT TVs. He records certain things that happen on their days on VHS tape. It's paper filing and put it in filing cabinets. So fascinating old technology. And he quite obviously has a favorite. He has someone who he enjoys watching more than anybody else, his favorite soul, if you will, who ends up dying in a car crash. And so their TV screen goes to a test pattern, and he now has to take on the job of interviewing these souls to decide which one of them will get to be born into that space or that life that is now available due to the death of his favorite. So that's quite hard on him in a sense, because obviously he's still quite cut up over the death of, in a way, this person, and he has to go through the whole process and is responsible for picking the person to replace them in a way. He is allowed to be an interviewer because at one point in time he was alive, where Benedict Wong is kind of an overseer kind of thing to make sure he makes a good choice, but he's not allowed to be an interviewer because he has never been alive as a soul. So it's a really, really interesting premise about how does one go about picking a soul to be alive, and they go through various tasks and to get these guys to potential souls to test, if you will, to decide whether their worthiness. And when he has decided that he doesn't want, that they don't qualify, or they're not suitable, whatever you want to call it, for life, he makes them say, one of the things he makes them do is to actually sit there and watch the TVs and watch the other souls. What is your favorite thing you saw this week? The most meaningful experience you saw this week, and I'll do my best to recreate it. And so he'll actually build like an apparatus in the back room of the house for someone to go on a pretend bike ride because they saw somebody doing it on the screens and decided they want to try it. And so the soul gets to try riding a bike for 20 minutes before they cease existing. So it's a first-time director, Edson Oda. I think he hasn't already. He will have probably a Marvel property very soon, or a DC property, or a Star Wars film, because the film shows a great deal of promise. He has a fascinating visual style. He wrote and directed this, and it's a really fascinating concept. I just love the idea of being interviewed to see if you would qualify to be alive. Where the film holds up a little bit is it's very languid in its pace. It's like, I described it to somebody on Facebook this week as the artiest art film it ever art filmed. Like it's very artsy, very Sundance, right? Like it's made for the festival circuit. Like the music, like if you were doing a parody of an art film, this is the soundtrack you would choose. You know, you would this if you were making a parody of an art film. The finish of this film is probably the way you would shoot the parody of your art film. Like, so at times it just feels like, oh, and being so heavy and important here. This is such a heavy and important story. You must, you know, this is such a meaningful scene and the music's rising. And I'm like, yeah, get to the point. Like, it is 2 hours and 4 minutes. It could have done with 10 to 20 minutes hacked out of it somewhere with a decent editor. And really tighten your story up. Tighten it up. Like, I don't remember how long it was last week. We're just going to double check. But I feel like Dirty Harry wasn't this long. And I reckon it was around about an hour 42 minutes, Dirty Harry. Right? And like, obviously a very different story. You know, story about a vengeful police officer versus souls being interviewed to alive, right? But you know, that you can tell there's a lot of story in Dirty Harry, right? A lot happens, and it just kind of keeps happening, right? And obviously the pace maybe for a police film and a science fiction film want to be different, but it's such a languid pace. He spends so long on some of the things, like the scenes where Will has created these experiences for the souls, and you're like, yeah, I get it, it's nice, Will's a nice guy, but get on with it, right? Don't care about this person, this soul, right? It's not a character we need to worry about. I know they're trying to tell us something more about Will, but it's like it really started to drag a little bit towards the end, and I'm like, okay, hurry up and get there. I mean, essentially, I think the point of the film's trying to make is I won't spoil it what happens at the end, just in case people do want to see it. And I would say it's worth a look if you can see it locally or it pops up on a streaming service nearby. I think the point of the film is to focus on the little things, right? Like pay attention to the things that the true joys in life are the things that you and I and the rest of us completely overlook because we've been alive. And for someone who has never been alive, these things would be a true marvel, a miracle. Eat a peach, ride a bike, walk on the beach feeling the sand between your toes and walk in the surf. That sort of thing is what I think they're trying to say. The true joys and miracles of life. And, we privileged people, being privileged to be alive, overlook the joy of these things. I think the kind of point it's coming to. And you're like, yeah, that's exactly what an art film would say, wouldn't it? It's nice. It's nice, but it's an interesting premise, reasonably well done. It looked really good. I'll give it that. The visual style and the idea of him using this really late 80s technology is an interesting choice. The acting's really nicely done. It's a little obvious at times that Zazie Beetz is going to be the character she's going to be. And again, the way it all works out is not particularly unpredictable. I liked it well enough. It was okay. It was okay. I'm being a little bit harsh here. It was for a first-time director. It's pretty good stuff. Yeah, it's all right. 6 out of 10, right? Like it's not terrible. I mean, if I would pay this, I'm going to give a caveat.
Okay.
I went to the movies and I picked my own seat, and some people decided to sit pretty much right next to me, despite the fact the cinema was like 80% empty, 90% empty. Because I guess they get those allocated seats, and you could have obviously sat anywhere else, but they decided to sit right in their allocated seats, which just so happened to be one away from me. And the hilarious thing is they dropped their popcorn the moment they sat down. I'm like, there goes $12. But they paid me back for my little snarky and Schadenfreude by being movie talkers and talking all the way through the movie.
Oh no!
So I got up after about 20 minutes and I went and sat on the other side of the cinema, so away from them, so I didn't have to listen to them whispering to each other, like I couldn't fucking hear. So, and you could still hear them. And give some fairness to 9 days.
Okay.
I was a little bit annoyed by that, and so maybe I wasn't completely in the best headspace to enjoy such an artsy film.
All right. Fair enough. And I guess it does go against your curmudgeonly nature.
Well, to be critical of a film, yeah, it's very, 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 very rare. It does not happen on this show.
Yeah, the other thing that I would like to talk about is something we haven't done in a little while. I want to talk about a game.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm going to talk about one of the dumbest games that I have ever played, but it's also one of the most entertaining, and that is Manhunter. Or is it Manhunter or Man-Eater? I've already forgotten. Man-Eater. Yeah, Man-Eater.
Oh, yes.
And you play a shark. And it is a revenge game because you start off, you start this game and you're playing as a fully grown shark. And you get caught by, what's his name? PD is like this shark poacher, and he's got like one of these stereotypical sea folks with a big beard. And he captures you quite quickly and strings you up, and he kind of guts the shark, and then this little baby shark falls out. And then the story begins with the baby shark biting off his whole hand and escaping into the water. And then you play the game. You are an infant shark going around, swimming in the bay, slowly but surely eating all the other fish and turtles and things like that as you wander through the bayou, growing up and evolving to basically get revenge on the person that killed your mother. And its best way of being described is GTA as a shark, because that's what you do. And there's a whole ton of missions that you go off and do. Like one of them is you go and you have to eat 10 seals. And here's the opening of the movie. That's your little baby shark right there, biting hand off. And then you're going around, and there's all sorts of different bits. You can go around and eat people, and it's just dumb. You go around and you can get mutagens. Like my shark has currently got electric teeth, and you can just go in, and it's really fun jumping up into the middle of a beach party and firing off an electric blast and watching all these humans just going and spasming on the floor because they're electrocuted. It's dumb.
I think
I don't know why I'm playing
metal armor and stuff as well, right?
You can eventually, yeah. You and so like the more shark hunters you eat, your infamy goes up, and then these special hunters come in and try to take you down. And when you kill them, you get special upgrades and things like that. It's legitimately stupid fun, but if you are looking for something that you can just jump in and out of and not have to use your brain whatsoever, it's entertaining. I'm playing it on the Switch. It's available on Xbox and PlayStation, and it plays fine across all of them. It looks pretty good, honestly. It's very, very much a one-trick pony, but you're a shark that eats people. What are you going to do?
There's not really a whole lot of places you can take that, right?
Yeah, narratively speaking, so like, oh, no, you play a character that grows up to attack Petey, but then you find out that Petey is your father. Twist!
Yeah, the M. Night Shyamalan cut.
It was all just the fabulous dream of a goldfish.
Ooh, that would be interesting. The Goldfish Simulator. There's probably somebody out there, right? Someone's probably already done it.
Oh, God, probably. But
It
it's
actually
a fun game. Yeah.
Just to be clear, yes, there is a game called Goldfish Simulator. It's a real thing. Anyway, I actually thought about giving this a try, but the last time I saw it, I went and had a look at the price. They were charging way too much for it.
Yeah, it's a bit pricey. Get it pre-owned if you can. But otherwise, yeah, it's fine. It's fun. Give it a try.
No, that's what everyone I've heard says. It's a stupid fun. You know, probably not a really long. You're probably not a replayability. You're probably not going to be going back for multiple playthroughs. Hence why I was a little bit like, I think they were charging like, I don't know, $50 or $60, and I was like,
yeah,
it sounds like a $25, $30 game. It sounds like a game I want to get on Xbox Game Pass, frankly.
Pretty much, yeah. It's perfect for that, and it should. I do kind of hope that they do an online thing, because it would just be hilarious to have a battle royale where everyone is just a shark.
Is there a multiplayer mode?
No, it is solely solo, and it would just be fun to literally just have hey, 100 sharks, who survives?
That's actually not a terrible idea. That is not a terrible idea.
There we go. We just created a new. We created the new Fortnite.
Only we knew, well, if only we own the IP, right? Like, you could send them a sternly worded letter.
Yeah. Just at them. Everyone who listens to this, just mention us when you're talking about #Maneater.
Who is the developer of this game? Let me just have a quick look here. Maneater is Tripwire Interactive, so I'm sure they have a Tripwire Interactive. Probably have they do. There's a Maneater Twitter account, so that's what you need to do.
There you go.
At the Maneater, there's a truth quiz. There is an expansion coming out August 31st to PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series S, Steam, Epic Games Store. Looks like the Nintendo kiddies are missing out, if I'm reading that correctly.
God damn it. Fine.
Well, if you're going to play on a child's console. Oh, I went there. No. By the way, speaking of the Twitch, did you have you seen the Steam Deck? What do you think of that?
Steam Deck, I think it's an interesting idea. I think it's going to cause troubles because there's already a silicon shortage, which means that the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series consoles are hard to come by. There's the Nintendo Switch OLED coming out in October, and now you've got the Steam Deck, as well as all of the smart tablets, phones, and cars. There's not going to be many of them around, and at the moment, it's not officially being launched in Australia. You have to get on your VPN and then go to Steam to pre-order it, and then arrange for it to be shipped out here. I don't know quite how or why they're really doing it now.
In fairness, this market doesn't matter. We don't matter.
That's true.
It don't matter.
Sadly,
25 million people, like US, Japan, probably not Japan because Nintendo are in Japan, but probably the US and Europe really are where you want it, right? Like,
yeah, that's true. That's true.
And I guess the question is, would you ever get the first generation of anything, right? Like, I think a friend of ours got an Ouya because they look cool. Remember the Ouya?
I remember.
The Steam controller that they had out for a while, that didn't work out so well. I remember looking real long and hard at the first ever foldable smartphone.
Oh, yes.
And that was a complete fucking disaster. I think the second one was pretty bad too. I've heard they're coming out with the third gen pretty soon. So
just keep trying, and eventually it'll work.
But if what if they said the first mobile phone, it's a bit big and heavy, no one's going to want that. We'll just quit, right?
It's true.
Iteration. So I think it sounds cool. I've heard some people say it could actually be the Switch killer, right? Like,
it's not going to be the Switch killer. Is the thing.
I don't necessarily agree with that, because the people who buy Switches buy it to play Zelda, Mario, Animal Crossing, which obviously won't be available on the Steam Deck. But I wonder how many of those people also play Fortnite, have a massive Steam library of games which you'll be able to play on the go if you pick one or the other. We'll be. Considering how rarely Nintendo actually release new stuff and just not remastered versions of old games.
I'm not rising to that bait. But I'm just curious as to who this market is marketed for, because it's not going to be high-end pro players, because no pro player is going to want to play it on the go. It's not going to be for streamers, because it's not going to easily be able to stream for it. It's not got the dock system, as far as I'm aware, like the Switch, to throw it up on a big screen. I feel like it's a great proof of concept for...
Have a dock, by the way.
It does?
I believe you can dock it. To correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure you can dock it and connect it to your telly.
Okay. But it's like, I don't really know who it would be for, because it's still quite expensive if you want to use... Yeah, if you want it to be your first gaming PC, it's like, don't get a handheld. And the rate that games are expanding, the download size, the requirements to run them, it's gonna be middle of the road at best for performance. So I don't quite know who it's for.
But maybe it's for a younger audience. I don't know. Like I have a Switch, which I think is fine. I am ribbing George a little bit about it, but like it's fine. But again, I don't go anywhere. Like I don't have a commute anymore of note. So I mean, the world we live in, I don't leave to go to work very often. I can't go anywhere. I would love to. So I don't actually feel... I've never, for the longest time, actually felt like I wanted a portable gaming system I could play. I think I took it on a flight to the US once, and I played it for a little while. That was useful if you're doing that kind of thing regularly, long flights and that kind of thing, or long trips of some kind. But I just don't personally actually feel a need for a portable gaming device, frankly. But the Switch seems to have sold very well, because obviously it can do both. But maybe it's some of the younger folks that they feel a need for, they've grown up with mobile gaming, and to have proper actual console quality games in their hands is something that they want. And something like this combined with Xbox Game Cloud, the Xbox Cloud version that they're talking about, would actually be a fascinating. And I think technically Steam Deck could do that. You'd probably have to do some fucking around on there to make it work. But you're right, because I think they come with fairly limited storage options. In terms of size.
I think that what's going to be more interesting is if it does become even moderately successful. It'll be interesting to see how Nintendo respond. Because people for years now have been wanting the Switch Pro with 4K output and a better screen and faster clock speeds and all of that stuff. And everyone thought it was coming, and then it was just an OLED update, and it's just a more beautiful screen with a bit more onboard memory, and it's a small upgrade to something that you don't really need. You don't need it. It doesn't play games better. It doesn't do anything except look prettier when it's portable. So it's a curious half step. I'm kind of surprised that they didn't do this because it's the OLED screen. Why didn't they do the OLED screen in the Nintendo Lite, which can't be docked? Because what's the point of an OLED screen on a system that is docked, because you can't look at that screen? So it's an interesting one. But if this is successful, will we see more?
I guess that Steam's in the fact that you have, I don't know, what my library has 201 games in it. I would hazard a guess maybe 100 have actually never been played. I've had a Steam library now since probably 2006 or 7. So it's probably quite a small library. So if you go out to people and go for $400, so what's that, 600 Australian? You can have something you can take on the go with you, and you can play. They keep saying you can play all of those games on that portable device. So I think that would be kind of interesting. I don't think I'd want to pay $600 if they release it here. I wouldn't pay.
Yeah,
you have to pay, add the Australia tax, call it $750. I don't know that I'd be rushing out, but I can see plenty of people would be interested in that.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting idea. I just don't know how much of a pickup it's going to get in the real world, but
time will tell. Steam have money up the wazoo, so
they can do these experiments and see how they go.
Should we get back to cinema? Because I have one more to finish off.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else you want to talk about in gaming before we leave the topic?
No, that's it. I'm done with gaming.
He gets a job in the gaming industry, and he's plugging games available now at EA. I have been, as some would know, regular listeners know, I've been working my way through some foreign language films of late, mainly Argentine films. This week I'm going to talk about a Spanish film, but with a strong Argentine connection. And this film is called The Method.
Okay.
From 2005. I think the Spanish title is El Método. Someone will tell me if I'm pronouncing that probably wrong. Remembering my Spanish language skills extend to ¿Dónde está la biblioteca? And where is the library?
Speak English. I learned it from a book.
A book. He's from Barcelona. So what is The Method? 7 Spanish top corporate job candidates are left in a room and informed on computer screens about their tasks, and that one of them is an observer. Let the psyching begin. So this is a psychological thriller of sorts, or drama, it calls itself. I think it's a psychological edge to it. So during the IMF and World Bank Summit, and demonstrations upset Madrid, like other capitals, major corporation Dekia holds interviews to recruit a top executive from 7 applicants. Their doubts start when they have to sign a clause accepting the Gronholm method, which nobody has ever heard of. It soon becomes clear that the tests are dirty mind games, but never what is true and it's never clear what is true and what is the trick. They must guess who among them is the HR mole and repeatedly eliminate one of their number from the procedure. Their priorities, ethics, and loyalty are put through stressing tests is one of the plot descriptions here.
Okay.
So we have these 7 people. They're put in a room. They're all fairly successful folks wearing suits and stuff. They're there for a job. And it sort of says they have to fill in these forms, and the psych out starts straight away because they have to fill in this very, very similar forms like multiple times. And they're like, "Hey, I've already filled this in." They're like, "Yeah, I know, fill this one in." So they're going, "What's going on?" So they're put in a room and they're basically told via the computer screen in front of them that everything that they do and say is being observed by a team of psychologists. And as it sort of says, there's one of them in there is an HR mole. It won't be told who it is. They're told to guess who it is amongst themselves, but they're never actually told, "Yeah, right, you're wrong. That person is or isn't the mole." And then they're sort of, guided through these dirty trick mind games to try and eliminate, candidates to really get down to the last couple. This is an interesting film. It's quite well done. I am actually a little surprised it has not made it into a Western remake because it's actually a pretty nice showcase of people's acting skills. People, again, who know me, I enjoy nothing better than you put a bunch of people in a room and here's a story, act. Talk to each other. Dialogue gets me excited in a film when you see it. I always go back to it again and again and again. The Tom Hardy film Lock. where it's just Tom Hardy driving to London in a car, talking on the phone. That's the film. And it just so happens that Tom Hardy is such an incredible actor. He can keep that story completely compelling the entire time for the entire 90-minute, under a minute runtime of that film. This is in a similar category. We have 7 people. We don't go anywhere else. It's based on a play, and that's fairly obvious. We only have a couple of different locations. They're in a room. We have a premise. They have to talk to each other. And while the dialogue doesn't rip and roar off the screen as it could, probably because it's all in Spanish, and I'm reading subtitles, so you're not quite getting it the way you might if you actually understood the native language. But it's quite fascinating to see how the characters turn tables on each other, and how the mind games play out, and how, unlike, say, an American film, I don't know if we talked about it before, if you've ever seen the Belko Experiment.
Oh, yeah.
I know I saw it. It was made by, I think James Gunn had some.
Yeah, I remember that.
Involvement with it. He didn't direct it or write it, but he was, loosely connected. You did write it. Sorry, he didn't actually direct it. It was directed by Greg McLean, the Australian. And that kind of reminded me a little bit of this. But whereas the Belko Experiment turns into a blood fest, this is all psychological. This is all what's going on in their heads. Big shout out to the director, Marcelo Pinheiro. I'm going to get ripped over for pronouncing that name incorrectly, I'm certain. He is an Argentine filmmaker. And I think the breakout star of this film, there were 2 of them for me. One is Pablo Echari, who plays Ricardo, who is kind of the closest thing to a male protagonist in the film. And he is, again, he's an Argentine actor. And the female receptionist is played by Natalia Verbecki, who is also turned out to be Argentine. I swear to God, that wasn't deliberate. But she's actually fantastic in this film. None of them, unfortunately, I don't think have done anything in Hollywood or in the West that you recognize. But if you like Spanish language film, or you like stuff that's a little bit left field, you might want to stick your nose into this one, have a look at some of their earlier work. I found the conclusion kind of apocalyptic. I would like people to see this film, so I'm not going to say more than that. It looks at one point like it's going to subvert your expectations. It doesn't quite in the end, but the ending's pretty well done. Some of it's a little bit like, oh, does that kind of thing really happen? And I'm like, it's Spain. Maybe it does. I don't know. So there's some sexual content in this film. I don't know if people are likely to, adjourn themselves to the toilets for a shag in the middle of a day-long, highly intense job interview. Maybe that's a thing in Spain. I don't know. I haven't been there.
Could be rough times.
That was a plane, completely different. So yeah, that was like, I'll be like, I don't know if you would do that. You're in a really intense job interview situation, and you're gonna try and shag somebody else. Okay, fine. Yeah, no worries.
I need to release some endorphins.
Well, yeah, but there's that. I mean, like, it's a different culture. The other film it really kind of reminded me of was 12 Angry Men. In a way, in the sense of it's like, those people were just in a room, conversations, conflict, working through, and alliances form, alliances break. That was kind of, it's not in the same realm as the original version of that. Quite, but I mean, it could be again like the language thing. You just don't quite get the same vibe from the dialogue when you're having to read subtitles. But I really quite enjoyed this film, and it was recommended to me. I had to go a bit out of my way to watch it. I had to download an app on my phone called Filmzy. Sounds like a fake app. It sounds like a fake app that the alien created in Rick and Morty. You want to start an app? But I swear to God, it's real. And it's a little bit like what was the app that we downloaded when we had to watch the Titanic film on? I can't remember, but there was a free movie app that we had to download at one point to that allowed us to watch
Titanic 2.
Titanic 2. There's some pretty awful stuff on that one. This is actually in a similar event. It said it was going to show me ads to watch the film, and I'm like, yeah, that's fine, no worries. But every time it would say ad loading, the screen would go black, and then it would just go straight back to the movie. And I'm like, I felt like it was going ad loading. Oh, you're in Australia. Oh well, fuck it, just keep watching the movie. I don't know if it was doing that, but it's streaming films, as we sort of said earlier, can be tricky. My girlfriend is of Argentinian heritage. You're probably not mistaken to know this is why I'm suddenly being recommended and introduced to this whole other world of film I didn't know existed. When we've been talking Ricardo Darín films. But quite often we'll find a film that he's in and we go, hey, we want to watch that. You fucking can't watch it in this country. Can't. No options. And, you got to go work your ass off to find a version that has subtitles because I don't speak Spanish, as we have discovered. So anyway, this one, Filmsy seems to have a little bit of interesting foreign material. So if you're like me and you like trying to find something that's a little bit left field, it looks like it works. It may be giving my phone AIDS. I don't know. But it worked well enough to it had very easy to access English subtitles for this film for this poor, monolingual person.
Okay. All right.
Real left field option, but I reckon give it a go if you're into foreign films.
All right. That's cool. SBS On Demand is actually quite good for foreign films as well.
It is also, unfortunately, something I do check. I have my a website I check when we're talking on this show quite often. It's called Just Watch. And it has a streaming search engine for Australia. And it does include things like iView. It does include SBS On Demand. So I do check there for my films. And this is, unfortunately, this occasion, and Metoda, I could only watch it on Filmsy. So one vote for Filmsy this week, the real hero.
The real hero of the show. All right. Well, was there anything else you wanted to talk about? Or should we round off the show?
Just quickly, 2 minutes. How up to date are you with Rick and Morty this season?
I just watched the recent episode.
I haven't watched this week's episode, but I watched the previous two. The turkey one and the one before that, the giant sperm. I feel like we could be seeing the end of Rick and Morty.
Yeah, and that feeling continues with this latest episode as well.
So it's not just me who thinks these last two episodes have been two of the most painfully unfunny episodes in the history of Rick and Morty.
And it's not that they're unfunny compared to other Rick and Morty stuff. It's they're missing more of the jokes than ever before.
It's a worry.
Yeah.
There've been one or two episodes here and there that have been like, whatever. And they started strong this season with the first two episodes were pretty good.
Yeah.
But it really is nosedived after that. And you've kind of gone, it's been painfully average. I'm sorry to say, guys.
Yeah. They're definitely trying to put more focus on the other members of Rick's family, and it's not working. The show is called Rick and Morty, and they are the two main characters, and when you take them out of it, you lose so much energy from the show.
And that's exactly what The Simpsons did, right? Instead of having episodes about everybody, and you're like, okay, you're out of ideas. Sorry to say it, guys, but we haven't we did talk about Rick and Morty a few weeks ago. I thought it might be quick time to revisit go. If you're on board the Rick and Morty train and you're feeling like you're not getting what you paid for this year, you're not alone. If you disagree and you love this season, tell us we're wrong. Get in touch with us via the Facebook page. We're on Twitter. I'm at Evil Trav. We all are at The Fried Brain, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct, yes.
You find us on Facebook, Fried Brain Productions. We don't and tell us we are wrong, and tell us why you think this season of Rick and Morty is still good.
Yeah. We'd love to hear from you. So that has been our show for this week, ladies and gentlemen. It was episode 121. We talked about Strange Days as our chain movie of the week. Travis is punishing me for crimes against humanity, apparently, with Howard the Duck. That's next week's chain movie. We had wonderful sponsors that are no longer relevant or exist or have completely changed because of social prejudices. I talked about Fear Street 2 and 3 on Netflix. Travis talked about 9 Days. I had a little talk about Maneater, not some random woman that I know, but a computer game. And we
not a Hall & Oates song.
We also talked about the Steam Deck and the Method as well. So we had quite a packed up show there.
Yeah, but we're under 2 hours, so you're welcome.
There we go. We're letting you out early, ladies and gentlemen.
Your butt is free to go and have blood returned to it.
Unless you listen to us on a podcast, in which case we are the fantastic noise to relieve bowels.
Relieve bowels. We're happy to be of service.
We shill for everyone, including Kleenex. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next week. Good night.